As a Gunpla builder and collector, there's always one question I tend to run into over and over again, and that is, when you're going to buy a Gundam model kit, how old is too old? For example, you've just started into a series that you've always meant to watch, so a mobile suit that you think is absolutely awesome, decide that you want the master grade because you love master grades, and then you see this on the corner of the box. And if you're like me, then the question arises, is this too old to actually get any sort of enjoyment out of? So I know there's a lot of different Gunpla builders out there, all with different opinions on what is good and what isn't. So that's why I want you guys to chime in down there in the comments with your own personal experiences and personal beliefs about what makes a kit too old. But for this video, enter the Master Grade Master Gundam. So you might think straight away, that thing looks awesome, and I agree, that is why I bought this, it looks absolutely awesome. This is also almost 2 decades old, and it does feel like it. So by modern day standards, this thing is really bad, but back then, this thing would have been blowing minds. If you have been building Gunpla for over 20 years, you may think, well, there's nothing wrong with this kit at all. But if you've just started building Gunpla last year, are used to the modern standards, and don't really realize that older kits are, well, older kits, that can be a little bit of a shock. So before I actually get into the meat of this review right here, which of course is the Master Grade Master Gundam, I will mention what is my own rule of thumb when it comes to buying Master Grade Gundams. That is, anything after 2011 is pretty much safe, and anything before 2011 starts to get a little bit hairy. So funnily enough, that just so happens to coincide with the date of release of the Gundam that blew my mind and got me addicted, which was the Master Grade 007 sword. So honestly, I'm not sure if it's just a case of that set the baseline for my expectations and just anything below that I find just a little bit disappointing, or just so happens to be that that year was a particularly sweet point for the change in Gunpla. Anyway, once again, drop your opinions, experiences, and miscellaneous musings on how old is too old down there in the comments, while we take a bit of a deep dive into the Master Grade Master Gundam. So anyway, jumping right on into the first part of the review, which of course is the aesthetics, and there's your boy Master Gundam out of the box and snapped together. So I will mention, as usual, I did do a very little bit extra on top of the standard snap build. That of course is just a bit of paneling on the face, and some of the other sections like some of the red and yellow on the front. And when it comes to Master Gundam, the first thing I have to mention is this design is off the charts awesome, and it always has been. And you might be thinking straight away, well, what's wrong with this kit? It looks great, and that it does. That's what catfished me into buying it. So because this review is a little bit on the different side, I'm gonna do it in a completely different format, and that is, I'm going to mix this review into a combination of facts and opinions, so both don't actually get mixed up. Now let's get them spinning. Fact! The build of this kit is extremely dated, and you might be like, well, duh, it's from 2002, but what I mean by dated and extremely dated is this thing's got screws, ball joints, shallow detailing that doesn't really hold panel lines. The raised details are soft, a little bit blurry to the look and not as sharp and impactful as modern kits. It relies on some stickers for some parts that are fairly critical. I don't know what to say about these decals. I never knew decals came this bad.
Opinion!
This kit still looks beautiful. And as far as I'm concerned, this right here is still shelf worthy. Its looks are its strongest aspect. It's got a strong silhouette, the proportions look just like Master Gundam. The color separation besides the yellow does look really nice. And even though there's screws in the build, for me the jury is out on whether they're good or not, because I have solid kits with screws, solid kits without screws, loose kits with screws, and loose kits without screws. So screws aren't necessarily always a bad thing, or always a good thing. Fact! This kit has nightmare undergating. Now honestly, I never knew undergating could be a bad thing. If you take some kits that have great undergating, like a lot of modern real grades, we're talking New Gundam, Sazabi, even some awesome Master Grades. For example, the Master Grade Hyakushiki 2.0, which is all gold plated, that has fantastic undergating. This kit has horrible undergating. And the reason is they're not intelligently placed. So these are placed right across from each other on the surfaces that touch on seams. So what this means is either you're going to end up with not enough filed off where the whole seam will hold open further than you want it to, or you may end up sanding off too much if you're not careful, leaving you with these gaps. Either way, you have to get it just right, or you're going to screw up the surface and have to fix it. I was wondering why this kit even had undergating to begin with, because it doesn't necessarily need it, but then you guys mentioned to me on Instagram that there was a gold-plated version, so I guess that's why.
Opinion!
This is knobs on hard mode, so don't rush this build. Take care, and if any of the knobs, especially on the head, are on the part switch sandwiched together like this, be extremely careful. Also, I will mention at this point there is a lot of knobs and seams all over this kit, but that is to be expected from a kit that is so old. Fact! Rubber everywhere! Rubber hands, rubber feet, rubber Master Asia! So I totally forgot that these little rubber pilot figures kind of came hand in hand with these inserts that greeted you once you opened the Master Grade boxes of old. So honestly, I would not be opposed to these making a comeback. These are so fun. I can't imagine what these would look like with modern technology, something that is about, what, 3 inches tall, maybe 3.5? That is pretty cool.
Opinion!
Actually, honestly, I think these should come back. So that little pilot figure actually reminded me of this right here. So this is another kit from around the same time, because this also came with a little rubber dude. This is also a kit I think is a little bit beyond its sell-by date and should be renewed, but it still looks pretty okay on a shelf. Oh yeah, that's the Master Grade Easy 8, just in case you don't know. But yeah, somehow I totally forgot about the opinion on the rubber hands and feet. So I actually like I actually do like the rubber feet. They have a great grip, they help it stand up, and they don't look that bad. Honestly, I don't look at the bottom of the feet of my Gunpla all that often, but these do a good job of keeping it solidly planted on the ground, so not so bad. As for the rubber hands though, I don't know about that. They look pretty cool, can't deny that. Fact! This kit is made out of some old school plastic. Once again, a bit of stating the obvious because it is an old school kit, but it feels extremely cheap to the touch.
Opinion!
It feels very brittle, be warned. Fact! The color accuracy is actually quite solid. We've got 2 shades of that dark navy blue, one a little bit lighter than the other. We've got red, we've got white on the face, the typical grey of the inner frame, and we've got some yellow in the chest. This does look nice and the colors are quite cool. However, we don't have any yellow on the wings, but this isn't really the biggest deal. There are stickers, you could paint them, but as far as color separation goes, for an almost 20-year-old kit, this is really good. What the hell are these? These are some kind of weird old school style decal. So these are not like the sticker style we get nowadays. These are very thin and kind of, for lack of a better word, crispy. Okay, so these go where exactly now? Okay.
Opinion!
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. What is this? I tried my absolute best to put this on this surface. This is a weird square flat sticker that they expected to pop on there. I know, you can take a blade and cut it at multiple points to make sure it lies flat, but seriously, unless you cut that out completely, and even at that, I can't expect it can ever look good. Fact! This kit has an opening cockpit.
Opinion!
It doesn't open very well. The only thing piloting this Gundam is a nut. No joke, the only thing inside of this thing's cockpit is the back end of a screw. So now moving on to the accessories, and here is the Master Grade Master Gundam with absolutely everything that it comes with, and for the most part, as you'd expect with a G Gundam mobile suit, it's mainly a whole bunch of different hands. Honestly though, the highlight in here, once again, is the rubber Master Asia. Fact! The Darkness Finger Red Effect hands are hard and not rubber.
Opinion!
Now I have no idea what the standard variants of the hands are. This doesn't seem to serve any purpose. As for the hands in here, we've got some relaxed open palm in a more finger held together, chopping looking way. Swapping these out is the usual routine. These are on ball joints, but I will mention, these are thicker than your average ball joints. Probably something to do with the rubber. Next up in here, we've got a holding hand for holding on to the Master Cloth. Attaching this into the hand is the standard routine of splitting the hand in half, then attaching it into the hand, then attaching back on the second half, except this is like made out of what's kind of like polycap material, so this feels absolutely awful, and it's kind of hard to do. Once you do get it in there, that is what that Master Cloth looks like, and does it hold on to it? It does hold on to it quite well, there's no issues there.
Opinion!
However, I don't think I'll ever be sold on rubber hands. The last of the rubber hands in here have a slightly different connection point. Instead of a ball joint, these are just kind of cylinders. And these are for pulling off a crossed arm pose, which is my favorite mecha pose of all time, so, Gundarium T- Yeah, right. Still though, this is definitely really cool. Because of the alternate hands, it does look incredibly natural, so I love this. So moving on through the hands, and we've got these absolutely gnarly Darkness Finger variants in red. These look so cool, and honestly they kinda look delicious. Evil looking spiky red hands. These are pretty cool. So these are your standard ball joints, just like what we would have seen with the other rubber hands. These are not rubber, they're hard. We also have this right hand variant. This one has a cylindrical attachment. It just pops on like so. And I couldn't help but notice this one, on the one I have anyway, has a little bit of flash on it. Easy fix, but it is there. Lastly then, we've a matching one for using with God Gundam, and seems like G Gundam has skinnier wrists. I guess I'm about to find out. Fact! Seems like, based on this one example, Bandai don't make wires like they used to. This is a decent, strong wire. What happened, Bandai? What happened? This is a good wire. Just for the sake of comparison, here's the one that came with the P Bandai Master Grade equipment parts for the Master Grade Barbie. Check this out. Look at that. This is piddly, weak, doesn't hold up what you want. It's springy. This one does not move. Sure, it will spring a bit, but this will hold whatever you're holding up with it up. This is piddly. I mean, seriously, it isn't even all that much more girthier. It's just a downright better wire. So the Master Gundam here has pistons in its arm for an attack known as the Near Crusher, but when it's not using its Near Crusher, it's got this long range attack known as the Distance Crusher. So once again, this is definitely a more robust wire than we would have seen in more recent kits. I find those are a bit on the piddly side. This is pretty good. It will wiggle a bit, but it will go right back to where it was. As for attaching this on, you do have to take out the elbow joint and replace it with these parts which you can attach the wire into, but that is pretty simple. And that is it for the accessories, and once again, fact! Rubber Master Asia, best part. Wait, it's got bolt in there. Yep, Rubber Master Asia, best accessory. So now moving on to the articulation and the very final fact and opinion in this review. Fact! This kit has fighting action.
Opinion.
Fighting action completely sucks. I mean, wow. Again, this may have been good for its time back in 2002, but as for right now, whew, yeah, that's not much in the lines of action anything. Anyway, from the head down, double jointed giggity giggity goo neck. There's up, pretty good. There's down, not too bad. Side to side blocked. The joint inside the shoulder is actually pretty good. It can move forward a lot. Sure, it doesn't look the prettiest, but it can move quite a lot and give you a lot. Mainly for doing that arm folding pose. There's the arm all the way up, so okay. Full 360 spin. Double jointed bend at the elbow, so you can see how these older kits influenced modern kits. Very nice. Rubber ball joint. As for the ab crunch, it's there to there. Even though there is a screw in here, I find this is incredibly loose and cannot actually hold up the weight of the wings itself. But that just could be my build right here, because I find the screws can be a little bit on the rough side against the plastic and kind of chew up the plastic a bit. We've got some rotation. Pretty basic ball joint front skirting armor. Side skirt is also on a ball joint, a bad one. And these little bits are on rubbery bits, which is kind of fun. And rubber, I forgot to mention earlier on in the video. Master Gundam bringing that premium butt flap. The hips are just standard balls and sockets, so these do not drop to anything whatsoever. And as for the kicks, that is it up to the front. There it is out to the back. Actually, out to the back isn't so bad. And as for the splits, that is it. That is all. Hey, but at least the upper leg here is separated so you can get that full spin, right? Wrong! It's lies! All lies! As for the knee here, this is a 2-point bend, so it is not that bad actually. As for the ankle, we've got a ball joint up here, and that's it, just ball joint up there. This seems to rattle around ever so somewhat frequently. I knock these off all the time. They're really odd. They're just held on by a little bit of pressure, and they're just so janky. This shark fin here that can wiggle back and forth a bit, and thankfully we do have a bend at the toe. It's not the greatest bend, but there is a bend there. As for the wings in here, these are the cheapest things I've ever felt. Wow. So we've got a bend in and out for some flappy. These can then rotate up and down like so. We also have a secondary point of movement up here. This wing can also flip out at that point, so that is 2 points of raising up. And this little guy wiggles here. So as for what you can get out of that when these are attached, these can spread out quite nicely and up very, very high. So as for the articulation on this kit, I guess it's par for the course for back then. Actually, it was probably pretty good for back then. But by today's standards, it is very, very limited, it feels quite cheap, and a lot of parts like to pop off all the time. Which is a shame, because Master Gundam is one awesome looking Gundam. Anyway, that right there is it for the review, and for me, when I asked the question how old is too old, this definitely falls into the too old category. It's got a lot of aspects I personally do not like about old school master grades. The articulation isn't great, the plastic isn't very nice to work with, or to touch, or to hear rattle around. And probably the worst aspect for me about this kit is the fact that it was zero fun at all to build. And to me, that is the most important thing about GUNPLA. The fun, the experience of building up that kit, that awesome mobile suit, and this just did not have that magic for me. That may not be the case for everybody, especially if you grew up with or used to build kits like this back in the day, then it might be a nice dose of nostalgia. So basically, how would I recommend this kit? If you know what you're getting into, if you like older kits, if this is something that will bring up some awesome memories for you, I say go for it. Even if you're someone who wants to see the evolution of GUNPLA, what older kits were like, what some original inner frames were like, then this is pretty cool for that. But if you just love building modern GUNPLA, the best of the best, love seeing what Bandai can pump out new every year, then of course this will not be up your alley and won't even be close. So I'm pretty sure this would have been gold or platinum tier back in 2002, but as you'd assume, by modern standards, this right here is bronze. Anyway, once again, drop down there in the comments, what is your opinion on how old is too old for GUNPLA? What is your favorite old kit and why? Make sure to come back for more GUNPLA reviews, and I will see you next time. Once again, I cannot finish this video right here without thanking each and every one of you guys. Whether you just watch my videos, like them, or support the channel on the channel memberships and over on Patreon. Like Craig Jerry, Greg Humphrey, Kaiser721, Tyler Sanders, Caleb Engelhardt, Sean T, and the ambassador for Asymmetric Cat.